recap of where the current budget is before moving on to the tentative budget for next year. And then we talk about ongoing projects and kind of the state of the town and where things are. And I do have public comments at the end, but we do this informally. If you have questions throughout, feel free to ask. So, to recap some of the 2023 budget. On your town and county taxes, the biggest chunk goes to the county. Last year it was on a lot of the comparables here are on a house of assessed value $150,000, pulled from comparables published by Erie County. So it's, in this example, 69% goes to the school, the county is 24%, and then the town is 7%. The school is the bill you get in the fall, the town and county is the one in the spring.
Does any of the school tax come through the town, through this, through this government?
Currently, no.
Okay.
It can for different municipalities. It's all a matter of where the tax collector resides. So, right now, in the town of Boston, it goes to the schools. So just with dollar values, if that same example of $150,000 assessed home would have an allocation, a tax levy of $2,533, of which only $171 of that goes to the town. So that's a pretty small chunk over the whole tax bill. So when people become upset about how high their tax is, you really have to look on where your taxes are going. Are they going to the county, are they going to the school, or are they going to town? So comparing, as I said, some of the taxes between the comparable towns, I took towns of similar populations. So you can see here, Boston is in the red. We have a population of just over 8,000. So the comparable populations are Collins, Eden, Concord, and Newstead. And of those 5, we do have the lowest tax on this comparable, which is the highway and general fund taxes. So the tax rate that we have is 1.7369, and that is combined between general fund and highway fund. So I did equalize it out. If everyone, because Alma actually has a tax rate or a set equalization rate of around 3%. So if you were to take all equalization rates back up to 100%, you can see how like Alma and Aurora, who previously looked like they had really high tax rates and really low taxes incoming, it's partly because of the equalization rate. So if you equalize it all out, that high tax rate would bring in a lot more tax revenue. Whereas Newstead, which had a higher equalization rate, which is the line here, they really don't have much difference there. So overall, in the general and highway fund taxes, Boston does continue to rank 6th lowest in Erie County, with just Sardinia, Merle, Wales, Akron, and Clarence ahead of us, and that is the same 5 as from last year. So the summary page of the budget is one of the first pages you see if you open up the actual budget, and it is all of the funds on the left side: general, highway, fire, light, ambulance, garbage, all the water funds, and then other items. The appropriations is a fancy word for budget expenditures. And that is made up of the estimated revenues, which is all the revenues outside of property tax, so interest, sales tax, etc. And then appropriate fund balance is money that we have already sitting in our accounts that we are going to reallocate to next year. And then after you take those away, what's left is the property tax that needs to be raised. So the 2023 taxes by fund, the highest amount goes to highway and garbage, followed by fire, water, and then a small portion goes to the general fund, ambulance, and lighting funds. So I mentioned fund balance. A lot of people don't know what fund balance is. It's basically what's left over of assets after all the liabilities are met. So an increase in fund balance would be caused by if you budget expenditures and then you don't spend as much, or if you bring in additional revenues than what you planned. So there are 5 different categories of fund balance. Those are mainly for accounting terms, but they're non-spendable is the stuff that are prepaid items for the town. That would be the retirement system, the way it's worked out, because it wraps around year end with the state. Restricted is money that is like grant funds and must be used for a specific project. Committed money is like the equipment reserve, drainage reserve. Assigned money is what is in the individual funds, like the lighting fund, highway fund has to be used for highway or lighting, it can't be mixed. And then what is left in the general fund that is not assigned is unassigned. And then reserve funds are legally authorized savings account for particular purposes such as equipment or capital projects. So the fund balance that ties out to the AUD, the annual update document from the end of 2022, we have general highway, fire and light, ambulance, garbage and water. The non-spendable parts at the top, like I said, are the part for the retirement system that wraps around year end. The reserve accounts are tied to the bottom here where we have the reserve for debt in the water fund, reserve for ambulance, reserve for highway equipment, and then in the general fund we have tax stabilization, buildings and parks, recreation, drainage, and TRISAC. And then in the middle part, in the yellow here, we have the anticipated use of fund balance in 2023, and then where we expect the 2023 fund balance to end up after the end of the year. And then what we plan to use, going back to the prior summary slide, and where we expect 2024 to end up.
Is the red stuff negative?
The red stuff, good question, is down in this yellow section is the town implemented a fund balance policy because we don't get taxes until March. So we have to have enough in our accounts to pay for the months of January, February after the year end. So most of the funds need about 20% of their balance of expenditures for the year in the account to be able to pay for that. So the fund balance policy was set where most accounts have to be 20%. There's a couple that are 15%. And this is where we estimate ending below what we expect to need as our minimum. So it's not negative, it's just we would like to see it higher than the minimum amount for our policy. And yes, that's only in the garbage fund, which comes into play in further conversation. So the tentative budget for coming into next year, we have the same summary slide with our expenditures and our property tax and the other revenues. So the revenues that come into the town as a whole, so if you take all of the funds combined, we will see 52% of our revenues coming into town from property tax. So all of the funds of water are funded mainly by property tax. Garbage is funded mainly by property tax. Fire and ambulance are property tax. So we talk later on, general fund doesn't rely much on property tax, but those other funds do. So overall, 52% comes from property tax, 23% from sales tax, 10% from budgeted use of fund balance, 7% from state aid, 6% from departmental income, and 2% from other items. So our expenditures, 22% is going out for salaries, 8% for employee benefits, 7% for capital outlay, 13% for general fund, 8% for highway fund, 15% for fire, 3% for EMS, 15% for garbage, 6% for debt payments, and 3% for water. So largest categories are going to be salary, fire, garbage, and general in that order. But I did for salaries and employee benefits, that is general and highway together. Down here, general and highway excluded those. Those are just contractual and equipment costs. So back to the summary. Here is what the summary page is. We have an estimated or a planned expenditures of $6,436,592. We're going to bring in $3,346,496 in taxes, which is a $95,992 increase from last year. The biggest part of that is coming from garbage fund at $99,000, and then we are seeing a decrease in the general fund of $22,000, and then a decrease in the light fund of $2,000, and then there's a few other changes of increases there, not because of tax rate increases, but because of assessed value increases. So the $95,000 that I just mentioned of the increase from 2023 taxes to 2024 taxes, 24% of that over there is coming from assessed value changes, The assessment roll values went up by 7.5 million from the 2021 roll to the 2022 roll, and we are a year behind on the roll, so we use the prior year roll to create the budget. Equalization rates also dropped from 66% to 59.5%. Then garbage fund, we need an increase of $30 a parcel. No one's gonna love that, but it's necessary. I'll explain further later, but it is a $94,000 increase, and partly because the contract has a 5% increase in it, and recycling has become a large cost that was never a cost before. Garbage fund also will have a new code in it for the people who added additional totes. That's only on the residents who added the totes though, it's not on anyone. And then for the decreases, we have a decrease coming in the general fund of 15%. We have a decrease of 20% in the lighting fund, and then the unpaid items like water that get added is a decrease. And again, that one is only on the people who are specifically the residents who didn't pay. So overall, if you net all those items together, you get the $95,000 increase. So where we sit according to the tax cap, everyone has heard the 2% tax cap. It's not a straight 2% because you are allowed a growth factor. This year it's 1.0082, and then we have the 2% here of growth factor. We are allowed a carryover amount, and then that gives you the amount we're allowed as a tax levy. Our proposed limit is coming in right now, $4,818 under the limit. So as I showed before, these are the rates from 23, these are the rates from 24, and then you can see that general and lighting is decreasing and garbage is going up. Is there a question? So breakdown of the proposed tax, going back to that house with an assessed value of $150,000. If you were to take all the tax rates and apply that to that house, you would get the estimate of general fund tax would be $35, highway $218, fire $197, light $6.91, ambulance $24, and garbage would be $298. For a total tax for all but water of $781. Down here, people get a little confused. The high and the low is because the districts have, with water and without water service, some of the districts have a lower amount because the line runs outside their house, but they don't get hookup. So those people would be the low amount if they don't have the water, and then the high amount would be the people who have the hookup, who pay for the water service. So on average, if you want to take the per week cost or the per day cost, I also have those out here too. Then the assessed value versus fair market value, because we've had complaints of people coming in of, oh, you're changing my fair market value on my tax bill. That's not the case. The assessed value, if it doesn't change year to year, is changing the fair market value because of the assessment rate changing. So when the equalization rate went from 0.73 to 0.66, you can see the fair market value went up. And same as when it went from 0.66 to 0.595, it also went as well. So in the same example, the assessed value didn't change, the fair market value changed. So the equalization rates at the town have been dropping. The last time we were at full equalization rate was at 2012, and it had a slow decrease, and now we are more rapidly decreasing. But for people who don't know what equalization rate is, it is the assigned dollar value that is the fair market value. If you were to take all the towns in the area and you, were to equalize them out, it's the estimate. So, I'm sorry, I'm tripping up. But it. So the assessed value refers to the dollar value that's used to assess the property taxes. If you apply the equalization rate, it would be what it would be comparable if you were to go anywhere in the state. So that is what the equalization rate does. So if you read your tax bill, obviously up here you have your demographics, you have the property address, use the town hall for an example because it's all public information. Then we have the assessed value, which has the 73% uniform value because this was 22. which made the fair market value. So here, the equalization rate times the assessed value gives the fair market value. So then the assessed value comes down to here, to the taxable rate, applied by the rate equals the tax amount. Here you can see the taxable amount is 0 because there's an exemption down in the corner over there. The exemption is here that the town owns it. For residents, that would more likely be a senior exemption, veteran exemption, agriculture exemption, usually not 100% value, so you'd still see a value in the taxable column. It would just be decreased by the amount of the exemption. So on the individual lines here, you can see that these ones are the towns, the general, the highway, the water here, and then county is also mixed in, and they're not separated, they are quite mixed in. So the library, the county, and the sewer are all here as well. So in this example, 220 goes to the town, 1,919 goes to the county. So on a residence bill, you can see this one doesn't have the exemption down there, so the taxable value is the assessed value. So reading your tax bill further, they are published. This is what I was talking about with the comparables across all of Erie County, is published of what the rates are. So they publish what the school tax rates are, what the county and what the town rates are. And it's on the assessed market value of $150,000. So if you're interested in anywhere in the county, you can go online and find that as well. So then, as I mentioned, exemptions, you would apply or multiply the exemption or the assessed value by the taxable value. Exemptions are shown down the bottom, and I already mentioned that there was a full tax, 100% exemption here, so the tax value is 0. Further information on exemptions is that the deadline is March 1st, it's the last day to file, and it goes through the town assessor's office. The exemptions that are all given are then provided as well on one of the last couple pages of the budget to show all of the aggregate value of the exemptions received throughout the town. So if we compare the 2022, 23, and 24 taxes, if you look, you can see the decrease in the general fund. 2024 is the green, and then 23 was the purple, and 22 was the pink. And you can see the garbage has been increasing every year with the contract amount. Further, water, every year we've kept it the same for the last quite a few years. So tax rates over the last 15 years, you can see general fund had 1 year of increase, but generally a decrease. Fire's kind of been all over the place. Highway went up, ambulance went up, garbage went up, and like went down. So for the breakout by fund, like I did for 2023, here's 2024. They're pretty similar. Garbage actually took over a couple more percentage, and highway dropped a percentage, and fire dropped a percentage. So the general fund, that 4% little sliver is what funds all the salaries and employee benefits, minus the highway workers. It's the cost to run the town clerk, the assessor, the court, the supervisor, code enforcement. It's all of the dog control, historian, summer concerts, attorney, engineer, senior programs, youth programs, advisory boards of conservation, planning, zoning, all of the buildings, all of the parks, basically anything that's not specifically specified by another fund. The large planned projects for next year, we are planning an EV charging station. We have some grant funds to go towards it, as well as the comp plan updates going on, generator, and town hall stairs. So in the biggest category of the general fund would be the salaries. So there is a proposed increase, 41,000 over prior year. That is 40 positions held by 36 employees, 5% raises to each of the employees, adding a part-time clerk for the supervisor. The current assessor is working part-time versus prior full-time, and then there's room to pay auxiliary boards added into here. So the reason that we are proposing a 5% wage increase is because overall it's a small increase in cost. Each 1% raise is only $8,500, split among 40 positions. So that raises biweekly payroll by roughly $305 for the town side, and monthly payrolls by $410. And for the employees, in their paycheck, we have at a 5% raise, half the employees are still only receiving less than $50 more of their paycheck. If you were to take that down to 3%, because 3% is a raise that has been very commonly given, the employee would only see less than $15. Half of our employees would see less than $15 a paycheck. So what would $15 get you at the grocery store now? It gets you 1 pack of chicken, 3 packs of beef, or a very small assortment of other things. That's why the main reason we're pushing for 5% raises, to get half our employees just $50 more in their paycheck. So also inflation, it was the highest it's ever been in 2022, 9.1%. It's currently at 3.7%. The chart down here shows that the high was there. We're still higher than it was. So that's still a factor we're considering. So $1,000 right now in August 2023, well, not September, October, but was the same as $953 last year and $882 the year before. So again, that $50 comes in. We're trying to get employees just that $50 extra in their paycheck just to be able to buy the same food or whatever they bought last year. Then utility rates, you can see they're all over. They were highest for gas last year. They are still high. NYSEG also has proposed hike increases over the next 3 years, 6.6%, 7.3%, 8.2%. So they expect that to be another $10 increase on people's monthly bills. Then employee retention. I know we recently had a few offices have turnover, and it's definitely upset the flow of things. It's hard to bounce back when you have someone leave or a bunch of people leave when we are mostly departments of 1 or 2 people. So employee retention, and then in surveys done of municipal working employees, the big things people say are benefits are the state retirement, the flexibility, the time off. The things that people don't necessarily say are always salary or benefits. Cons of being a town employee right here, there's little to no overtime. There's no opportunity for promotion. There's no disability pay, no FMLA, no paid family leave. We're exempt from the New York State sick leave. So, I mean, you, in order to draw in talent, have to offer something. So, I mean, there is the state retirement system. We do have 7-hour work weeks at Town Hall, 7-hour work days at Town Hall, and a good time off package, but you have to draw in talent somehow. Then there is the minimum wage, and Social Security is increasing. Minimum wage is going up another 80 cents, which is a 5.6% increase. It's going up to $15 an hour, and that is at the end of this year. And then going forward, the next 2 years is also going to be another increase of 50 cents, and then after that is going to be tied to inflation. That was passed by our governor earlier this year. And then Social Security is also going up. The cost of living expense was 8.7% for 2023. It is estimated at 3.2% for the coming year. And then lastly,
Could you go back to that
Yeah.
previous, if you notice on there, the cost of living, if you look under there, the 8.7 for 2023, that's the largest increase in 42 years
Yes.
for the seniors.
Yes.
Yeah, and so what you're talking about, your raises, doesn't really compare to that, in my estimation.
That's fair.
Not you, I mean, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
What would you say would be your average Social Security raise in the last several years? You got 1%?
We got 8.7 last year, before that was 3.1, I think, before that was 3 something.
It's usually around 3.
It's always been about 3. But when you're not making 1,000 a week, you know, if we were making 4,000 a month and they get some kind of a percentage like that, well then, yeah, it'd be nice, but.
Yeah, it does say that that would be roughly 57 per month, which, yeah, it's
So-
small.
Save your money. You don't need it.
So then, contracted services that we've all entered into recently, most of them are settling at 5% as well. So the health insurance is going up 6%. The deductible went up by about $900. And then The waste management has a 5% in it. The fire companies have a 5% in it. Ambulance and EMS needs an increase. And then grant writing had a 22% increase because we had to switch grant writers due to our last one going out of the industry. And then IT service also increased. And then if we put 5% increases on the highway union and drop a little bit of the extra overtime in there, the highway personnel lines would be $19,000 increase over 6 people, an average of $3,000 per person, and then the general fund 5% would be $41,000, which over 36 people is $1,145. So the salaries of elected officials, that always has to be published as well as a separate page. I also showed the prior 2 years. The council members were the same in 2022 and 23. Did put that 5% in for them as well as everyone else. And then just to show the comparison across our similar towns that we talked about earlier, the 5 comparable ones, in red again, Boston, we are kind of middle of the line on each of the categories of council, town justice, supervisor, town clerk, and highway super. And then revenue funds for just the general fund. We get our largest portion of sales tax. So if you remember that number I gave you for employee salaries, it was $965,000, just like sales tax. Salaries are paid for by sales tax. They're not coming mainly from your property tax. Property tax is only giving you $141,000. That's not even one department. So biggest source of funds is sales tax. Then mortgage, court, and property tax are pretty equivalent, around 10%. And then we get franchise fees of 7%, and then 5% from the trooper barracks rent, and then grants, departmental revenue, and interest is all pretty small portions. So I know you can't really read this, but I do go through if you want to look at it later and specify out what each of the lines of the general fund budget has in the contract or has in the budget for this year. Most of it's the same as prior year. I'll highlight a few. So the town board, we're decreasing in half, mainly because we've put primarily postings for public notices in there, and we're now making a publicity line for that. So we're moving it out of the town board budget. But we're leaving enough in there so that if the board wants to go for trainings, there's still the ability to do that. Most of the other ones on here, justice, supervisor, finance, assessor, fiscal agent, town clerk, attorney, and personnel are staying the same as the prior year. Most of their costs are office supplies.
What does the CONT mean?
What?
Equip and CONT?
Contractual.
Thank you.
So the big classifications are personnel, equipment, and contractual. Contractual doesn't mean it's a contract, it's basically everything else if it's not equipment. So if you're buying office equipment, or if you're buying a IT product, if you're buying a subscription, it doesn't matter. It could be a pen, it could be a software program. It'll be contractual.
Thank you.
Ally, what year is the fire or the state trooper barracks paid?
There will be an increase in 2024 of the final increase to the monthly payment, and then that goes for, I believe, like 5 or so years at that rate. I'd have to check. So on this slide, continuing on, engineers pretty much the same. Records management, we did put a decrease in the equipment fund. There is money in there for this year for the new records management system that's been requested. As long as it's purchased by year end, the money can be encumbered, so that doesn't need to be there next year. Buildings, we're doing an increase because the cost of maintenance and utilities and everything is going up. Central communications, we did put an increase in the equipment line because the code enforcement wants a new permit software, as well as, like I said, if the records management equipment doesn't get bought this year, that could potentially try and get some of those funds as well. Then the other government support is the grant writing that I mentioned. We had to switch grant writers, and that cost went up. Insurance also, 7 to 10% increase, and that caused a $10,000 increase there. Dog control, we gave a little bit more contractual, decrease the equipment just by use of what they need. Publicity, like I said, is going to be the new one to capture job postings, public hearing notices, and hopefully some newsletters and comp plan mailings, because that's been requested. The historian is looking into some new historical markers through town. We did do a Pomeroy grant, and that was well received, and there are some other ones that could use replacement. So we put $2,000 in there, as well as the planning and zoning kind of flip-flop money based on what is of need right now. The zoning needs less, planning board needs more. Drainage and erosion, we did decrease both of those kind of significantly from $10,000 to $2,500 each. The main reason being we haven't had a lot of projects come through, and if we do, we have a reserve fund that's over $180,000 now. So if any project does come through that's qualified, we can use that reserve fund. The employee benefits also increased, state retirement, social security, and workers' comp are increasing. So then highway fund, 26% of your tax goes to highway fund. That's the salaries of the highway workers, employee benefits, it's the salt, the sand, the stone, the asphalt, the road repairs, and any town equipment that we buy. So the 2024 planned repairs are, there is a plan to be new CV 515 plow truck. There was one put in the 2023 budget, which was purchased at $171,261, but as we know, inflation doesn't keep anything the same cost, so the expected cost is $15,000 higher.
Hopefully we'll see that next year.
Yes, we haven't got that, hopefully we see that next year. Any word on that? So personnel services lines, just a comparison prior year at the top to upcoming year at the bottom. And that just breaks out, we have general repairs, snow plowing, and brush, all totals together to $452,000 last year, $474,000-ish this year. And then it shows also the Social Security and Medicare cost. Then again, we have the employees, the salaries increase based on the union contract. Currently that's in negotiation, so it doesn't have, wasn't great to work with the numbers, so we did kind of a middle ground there of the raise there. The overall increase to salaries in the highway fund went up 4%. That either can be used towards a 3% raise with the same amount of overtime, or a 5% raise cutting back overtime 25 hours per employee. Historically, over the last 5-10 years, the employees have not used all their overtime. Now they say that we'll probably get a giant storm. In that case, they can pull from fund balance by a budget amendment if need be. But CHIPS, Pave New York, Extreme Winter, and Pave Our Potholes are pretty much all the same. CHIPS did see an increase of 13%. So we're expecting $121,000 of CHIPS, $28,000 of Pave New York, $24,000 Extreme Winter, and basically $19,000 Pave Our Potholes. That works by a reimbursement basis. We pay the money, we submit for reimbursement, we get back up to the amount that we reimburse. Machinery, like I said, we are putting in for that one piece of equipment, and then we are decreasing the contractual costs by $5,000 because we've seen less repairs as we've cycled in more new equipment. Brush and weeds, the $5,000 for the side of the road overhang is staying the same, and then snow removal we did decrease a little because last year we had a $10,000 increase. We haven't seen that really used, so we're decreasing it back to $10,000. And then the equipment, here's the equipment list for items owned by the town. The ones at the bottom here are the 8 assets purchased in the last 4 years. The ones in dark are the ones disposed of in the last 4 years. And you can see that our oldest equipment's from 1976. And then pretty much every year, every couple of years, there was something bought until 2010, where there was a 10-year span where we didn't buy anything. So now we've started back up of the replacements. So on the highway superintendent's plan for the next few years, he does have the one we mentioned that is going to be replaced with the one that comes in that's already on order, the one in the budget for next year, and then he has a pickup truck set for 2025 replacement, a International Pay Star for 2026 replacement, a dump truck for 2027 replacement, and a Gradle for 2028 replacement. Obviously pending if it actually goes through the budget or if anything else comes up as needing replacement sooner. So the highway is mainly funded by property tax, $864,000. We did put $275,000 of sales tax in there, and then the state aid, as I already mentioned, and then the interfund revenue is the money received in the highway fund from doing the brush collection for the general fund. Then onto the fire fund, there is 3 fire departments in the town, and they each get a nice contractual payment of $215,000 this coming year. That is up a 5% increase from I didn't update the years, but that's correct, 2024, not 2023. And then the PenFlex, Provident Life Insurance, and Health Works, we're estimating 2% increase. Dispatch Services, estimating 2% increase. Workers' Comp is going to stay the same because we have a 2-year rate lock. And then the LoSAP program, we're going to put $300,000 in for that. Half funded by sales tax, half funded by property tax. So this has been funded by many years underfunded by many years with a growing gap. So a little bit about the Length of Service Award Program. Nationwide is where the money goes and gets invested. It's where the money sits. Landmark Wealth is the one who invests that money and chooses where to put it. They're just the broker. And then PenFlex is the one who issues the annual reports. They're the math people who calculate how our plan is doing. PenFlex issues the annual report that shows what our funded ratio is. So over the last, this is I think 8 years, it shows that the net program assets have dropped to around $2 million in the first column. The liability is how much we owe out. We owe if everyone was to be owed their benefits right now, people have accrued $5.6 million in benefits. So the difference between that 2.1 that we currently have and the 5.6 we owe would be 3.4, 3.5. So our funded ratio is 39%. So they've started putting into our report that if we continue to fund below their recommended contribution, which down here shows that the recommended contribution is around $400,000, then we're going to continue to decrease our funded ratio, and we are going to have a plan becoming insolvent. We did have a call with PenFlex this week, and they did agree that they've talked to their actuaries, and there's really no way to invest out of it. There's no way to kind of change the plan to make it affordable. Our options are really, I'll go over that in a few minutes, but our participant breakdown is that we have basically 121 people owed benefits, currently receiving benefits, and only 52 people active. So if, like the prior slide says, talking about going insolvent, there's going to be members who are active and not vested yet, who are really going to suffer without any payout. So comparison of costs, you can see our sponsor contribution has kind of wavered, but we've stayed around $200,000 for the past years. We did put more in last year because of excess sales tax we could do, and we are putting more in 2023 because of excess sales tax again. And then our rate of return, we have only had an average rate of return of 1%. 2022 did really bad for us. So our contributions have never in the past 10, 15 years exceeded what the contribution suggestion was until this year. We will exceed it for the first time this year by $50,000. You can see our net program assets, as I was describing, is going down. Our liability, the amount we owe out, is going up. And the unfunded liability is growing because our fund ratio is growing. So we are at the lowest funded ratio ever. We did have a dip down, and then we got back up between investments and a little extra contribution, but we've dipped back down again. So when we met with PenFlex last year with the fire companies, and when we talked to them this week, they said there's really not a way to invest our way out of this problem. we have the options of either freezing the program, which would, then we'd have to amortize the amount out and pay it off kind of like a debt. And that would be looking at still a $280,000 or $1,000 contribution for 20 years or $235,000 contribution for 30 years. Meanwhile, none of the fire company members are getting their service award points. Not a great situation. The other option is terminate and pay out, because we're at last year only 46% or funded ratio. They'd get 46 cents to the dollar. This year it'd be 39 cents to the dollar. Also not a great situation. Changing the plan, like I said, is we could look at trying to change it to a defined benefit or defined contribution. We'd have to go back to closing out the plan and starting a new one. So the best option really is to get the funded contribution back up, because if we can contribute their suggested amount, then we'll start raising up. Eventually, if we can contribute their suggested amount, it'll get back to 100 eventually. Do we have to contribute exactly their funded amount? No. Should we try and aim closer to it? Yes, if we want to keep the plan from going insolvent. So that's why we are increasing the contribution to $300,000. So on the other side of fire, their reason for the contractual increases, they do have to outfit the firefighters. It costs around $10,000 for all of the gear of just one firefighter, between their radio, their helmet, their gloves, and all their fireproof gear. And that is not the other equipment, that's just what they wear. So the ambulance funds is the next part. 3% of your tax goes there. We are proposing an increase to their contractual from $70,000 to $80,000. We did sit down with them this week to look at what their budget is and where their costs are going. And yeah, it's all medical supplies, and all the mandated are going up. So their insurance costs are going up, their first aid supplies are going up. We're mandated by the state to run PCR. So the care reports have to go on tablets. Tablets wear out, they have to replace them. They also are an aging population, so they're looking at they got like Lucas devices, which are chest compressions that do it by a device. Those need to have mounts for it. Then we also have to pay for the dispatch services, we have to pay for the physicals and respirator tests, and we also, as part of the contractual costs, have building utilities, EMS tuition, EMT tuition, fuel, workers' comp, and LoSAP. Ambulances has been a topic with them for quite a few years. The estimate that we received this year is $266,000. They've been vying for an ambulance for quite a while because their prior ones were from 2008 and 2016, and they only have an estimated life of 10 years, and they're going on 15 with the older one. The Equipment Reserve Fund we currently hold for them is $184,000 in it, and some. And then there's $40,000 in the contract for this year, which would take us to $225,000. So this budgeted $40,000 will get us the final way to get them their ambulance. And then good news is the other ambulance loan payment will be paid off at the end of '24. Just in time for them to need another one. But they also were talking about the heart monitors they got through a FEMA grant. The Lucas devices and power loaders they also got through grants. But they do need mounts for their Lucas devices, which were not covered by the grant, and the tablets, as I mentioned, for the electronic care reports are also needed. So here's just a nice graphic of the cost to operate an ambulance. You have to, pay for the ambulance, the CPR device, the monitoring devices, ventilator suction, and all their medical costs on the ambulance. So just looking at all of our emergency responders in town, we've got the EMS, the fire, and the 3 fire companies. I did take the dispatch reports from 2022, put them in a graph, as well as the dispatch reports up through July of 2023 in a graph. So you can see that the call volume for EMS is significantly higher than the fire companies. They actually made 700 calls last year, and their funding contribution has not gone up much over the last 10 years. So lighting fund is the next one, a really tiny portion of your tax bill, less than 1%. It covers the street lighting districts. We've partnered with NYSEG to replace a lot of the bulbs with LEDs, which has reduced the usage, which has created more steady costs. So you can see back in 2018-19, the costs were pretty variable. We did the LED conversion, the rate or the usage has been consistent. Our costs have gone down, so we're passing that on now with another 20% decrease. We did a 20% a couple of years ago, we're doing another one. We were a little worried last year about our supply rates going up. They doubled last year, but you can see it had a small increase, not horrible. So the utility rates, we are under contract for 1 year at 0.5249 for natural gas and 0.0852 for electricity, which both of them were a slight decrease from last year after last year's doubled from the year before. Then we talk about garbage and refuse. This one has the large increase. We go back, 28% of your town tax covers this. The contract was formally bid out in 2019. Waste Management was the only one who bid, so like it or hate it, we were stuck with them. Their contract bid at that time did have renewal clauses, so when their contract came up in 2022, the renewal clauses were exercised. The blended value recycling in that contract did look like a great option when the markets were good. We saw rebates, even having, we had credits on our account for recycling. Now, our recycling has never been higher. We're seeing bills averaging $3,000 a month for recycling, which 3,000 times 12, you're seeing almost $40,000 of just recycling costs. When we used to pay zero for recycling, just 4 years ago, we paid zero. So garbage for recycling, you can see that the blue line here is newspaper and cardboard, and then Comingo, and then you can see the purple one over there is solid waste, and the total cost of tonnage, or total tonnage is there.
Do you know if recycling is billed by ton?
It is, yeah.
Okay, so the less residents put out, the lower that bill becomes?
Yes, so I don't know partly if the totes that we now put out might have had an adverse effect for that because the tonnage, but I mean, you would see that here, and it didn't really have the uptick that kind of would have mirrored that. I mean, you do have the recycling total ticked up a little, but it didn't dump up a ton, like so.
The idea
Yeah.
is to make residents aware.
Yeah,
Put it in the garbage.
it's
Don't
actually
recycle
not
it.
though, because
That's
our
a tough
garbage,
one. Just the
our
actually.
solid waste is way up here though.
Yeah.
That's
So
a tough one.
so we have data sets, sorry. So we have data sets that show that when the town switched to totes, that to your point, yes, recycling went up, solid waste went down, it is based off of tonnage. I've had conversations with the county comptroller, Kevin Hardwick, because we're trying to figure out how to balance this out. But to your point, put it in the trash, what's gonna end up happening, because they track all this, it all goes to a transfer station, we're gonna get fined for that. That will come back onto town, that's all part of the contractual language, that if we're putting recycling in the solid waste stream and it's not true solid waste, the fine, Waste Management simply just kicks that right over to the town. But what's also interesting with the data, and Ali's got some, again, we got a bunch of different data sets on this, but on the recycling, you come out of you look through the pandemic and you come out of the pandemic, what happened? Everybody's at home, everybody's doing this on their phone and on their laptops, ordering stuff off of Amazon. So all your paper packaging, all your cardboard boxes and all, shoots through the roof. Paper right now has basically a goose egg as far as a value out on the market. I was out at the Waste Management transfer station in Syracuse, and went to that facility. Paper is stacked as high as this Morton building because there's zero value to it. It's almost like just before the pandemic, plastics, grade 2 and 3 plastics had zero value. That's like your plastic 5-gallon pails, etc. So they're warehousing all this, but your aluminums, your metals, things like that, that has a high ROI, so they try to keep all that clean. The paper products, clean paper, like what we have on our desks that are these handouts, if they can get clean paper, that has a high value. But the corrugated cardboard and that stuff, it's killing us right now.
Harder.
yeah, it's a problem.
Burn man.
Is there anything that talks to the situation with bulk? I know it's changed from once a month to, from once a week.
Scheduled, yep.
And we seem to be having a problem with a lot more visibility on bulk.
Yep.
Is there any discussion about either change in costs or change in mechanisms on how often they pick it up or anything?
So I think that's a double-edged sword. Great question. I think what I can tell you between the town clerk's office, and she's not here to speak, I mean, I know we got some town clerk's deputy, but, so here's what I've experienced in phone calls or working with residents. Jason Keating buys a new sofa, I get the new sofa at my house, I put the new one because I don't want to pay the $50 or $100 to have ABC company haul it away. I'm taking it out to the curb. I call Waste Management, they say, your collection date is whatever date that is, and it's sitting at the curb, and to your point, that's where we're seeing it. It's a social, it's a change, it's a social change, that's what that is. I have dealt with probably half a dozen since we've made that change over to the scheduled pickup. I can't speak for the town clerk's office, I don't know if they have, an influx. They had early days, we had a bit of an uptick because, again, the change. But what we're also identifying is that, on the bulk collection, Waste Management went through a change where there was a phone number, then to try to increase customer service, they went to a web-based portal, and then, I just dealt with a resident last Thursday on this. The web portal confirmed, gave them a date of collection, put it curbside, and there's no collection whatsoever. It actually hit, for any of you that's on Boston, comma NY, that was out there. Yeah, so anyway, that was a call into Waste Management. They, truthfully, the truth is, they don't know what happened. They said, yes, the resident has a confirmation number. We don't have it in our system. That's why it got missed. I can't explain that for Waste Management. That's a problem. Can we change that? Yes. It's just like anything else. It just depends on what we want to pay for it. So changing that bulk pickup, so the contract that the town had, because even back when I was a councilman, I was a solid waste liaison, it's a rich contract. I mean, we have bulk pickup. I mean, technically in the bulk, you can put in brush, you can put in leaves, you can put in almost anything up until, I hate to say a dead body, but basically, if it was curbside, it went. We have a very rich contract. So to try to keep the continuity of that program in place, when it went out to bid, to Ellie's point, it's a bid process. The town board, we don't have any control. So we put bid specs out, it goes out to the market. Modern submitted a letter, they respectfully declined to bid. Waste Management was the only hauler that bid on it. We got what we basically bid on. Then there's conversation because of the increase at the time of the solid waste contract of how do we ramp some of those costs down? Because if the town, that is, did not go with the solid waste carts, which love or hate conversation there, but if we did not go with that, kept the bulk as basically as a weekly collection, we would have seen sizable increases. So, the conversation as well, look at other haulers.
With the same discussion happening a couple years later.
Yes, exactly. So, the conversation is, well, go with a different hauler. It was out to bid. The town board can't select haulers. It goes out to a bid. Whoever comes to the table comes to the table. And admittedly, in today's market, from different other boards that I'm on, we're seeing we're only one or two bidders coming on projects, depending on what's going on in the market. It's an interesting market right now. But yes, we can put bid specs out again. I don't know how that's going to go.
Actually, our current contract keeps us through 28.
Right.
28.
Right, but when that next contract comes up, who knows what the market's going to bear. But recycling is it's an interesting animal. If you recall, there's the
You say 28?
2028 is the next time we go out to bid. Yes. And then, if you recall, when China started, it made national news when China was refusing plastics and our paper products, that was the early stage of what we're feeling right now, because now internally within the United States, we're trying to figure out how to get rid of it. Covanta is a potential solution. If you don't know Covanta, it's an incinerating facility up by Grand Island. But again, I've been working with the county comptroller on this. There's a lot of discussion on this, because everybody's feeling the pinch right now on solid waste.
So the corrugated cardboard, even though we're receiving a lot more packages at home, isn't getting recycled to make new boxes?
The truth of that, another good question. The truth of that is, is it getting recycled? Yes, it should be. And quite honestly, if there's no market for it, it sits too long, doesn't matter if it's Modern, Waste Management, whoever, it goes to a landfill. So there's the vicious cycle. The hauler, whoever that is, doesn't matter if it's ABC Contracting to one of the titans, which is Waste Management. They're an international organization all over the place. If they cannot get rid of it, It's going to a landfill, and they pay that fee. Of course, here we go, right? It's a business, so that, they pay a fee to get rid of it. It gets baked, it just gets baked into their O&M, operation and maintenance. It gets baked in, that cost is passed off to all of us. Going back to that vicious cycle, we start dumping everything into the solid waste stream. New York State DEC regs, unless something changes out in Albany, that's our world with the DEC. It's a conundrum. Solid waste is a big, big challenge on the horizon.
So yeah, part of our contract also is at your door collection. If you're interested in a video on it, at a later date, you can follow that YouTube link. Everyone should know that we have that. We've had it a couple years now. If not, it is something we offer for household hazardous waste, all these different items, garden chemicals, swimming pool, flammable, paint, household cleaners, and even electronics. There are a list of ineligible materials, so I believe once you go to order or schedule your pickup, it goes through what you have to do for it or if it's eligible or not. So yes, as for the contract, it is going through 2022 to 2028. The contracts for the first 3 years were 5% increases, and then the last 3 years will be tied to inflation. They did put 2 3-year terms in there because of the totes. They wanted to see the capital investment was worth it for them. That's why they kind of tied us to the longer contract. So yeah, the totes, 96 gallons, the stickers sold by the town clerk for $3 for each bag. Additional to that, the recycling, the bulk we've already talked about, and then the ability to buy an additional tote. So we talked about additional totes in prior years, about how it gets added to your tax bill. If you want to put one on, you go to the town clerk, you pay a fee to pay the rest of the tax that you currently have, and then it will go on your tax bill. We have had a request of, well, how many bag stickers are actually sold? So here is the chart. How many additional totes have been sold each month? We did have quite a few at the beginning, but we're actually still getting some, a smattering here and there over the summer. And then the bag stickers, we've sold almost 1,000 now. The contract renewal, the garbage collection for this year is $256 per house, which is $21 a month, 5% increase over prior year. The at your door cost $29 a year, which is $245 a month. And then recycling, as we already discussed, has a blended value. It's kind of hard to predict, but we are seeing a very high cost there. Diesel, also there is a fuel portion written into our contract where fuel was so high when we negotiated the contract, they wrote it in there that if it goes higher than $4.85 a gallon, we have to reimburse them. If it goes lower, they will reimburse us. And then rates change in July because that's when the contracts are up. We did talk about blended value recycling. Basically, their costs get passed on to us or their revenues get passed on to us. So for 13 months, we saw a rebate. 6 months, we saw really low cost. Now we're seeing the expense of it because the market's low. So to calculate how much tax is needed per each household for the $30 increase, we are looking at $298 per parcel total now. Garbage will be 6 months calculated at, this is for the whole town, these numbers, but if we go right to the household, garbage is $251, 6 months at $19, and 6 months at $20.37. At your door would cost you $29 for the year, 6 months at $2.22, 6 months at $2.33. Recycling is $13, and then the account leeway, as I put it, is $5 there. That covers the diesel surcharge, the fund balance policy, because going back to when I was asked about why the account was red, our fund balance is below our policy minimum. So at the rate we're going right now, our recycling costs are chewing up our fund balance. By the time March comes around, we won't have enough to pay the garbage recycling bill in March until we get our tax revenue. That is the status of the account there. So on to water, 14% of your tax covers water. The ECWA is our infrastructure is a lease managed water district. So we own it, ECWA maintains it. So any of the large repairs and additions, town has to pay for. Any of the breaks, ECWA goes out and repairs, and they bake it into their cost that they charge us. Or if it's an extra large repair, then they will bill us separately for it. So our planned repairs and upgrades, we did start projects back in 2022 that are ongoing for each of the tanks, as well as water lines and pump station repairs. Our water bonds, we have actually paid off the District 1 and 2 bonds in 2022 and 2023, so yay! Water District 3 has a while to go because they are not looking to pay off until 2040 and 2048 because they were the most recent addition. Water lines, we actually have 160,000 feet of Boston District 1, 61,000 in Boston District 2, 8,000 in District 2 Extension, 87,000 in District 3, and 2,000 in District 3 Extension. So $320,000 or 100,000 of linear foot of water in the ground. And that comes from the GIS mapping system in Erie County. So that is kind of a picture of our water districts. Over on the hill over there is District 3, hill over there is District 2, and right down the center of town is District 1. So our ongoing projects, kind of the state of the town area, we have the water main replacement that we got some CDBG fund, which was down by Meadow and Ripple Drive. That is 98% complete. Why I don't say it's fully complete was because they had comeback work to do that they didn't do until this past month, and we haven't seen the bill for it yet. So hopefully that will be done and closed out. That is the first step of our water projects. Then we have our water tanks. Woolhider, Rice, and Crestwood are all mostly done. Those were waiting on ECWA to build. They've billed us for around $600,000 of the just over $1 million of repairs. The water line replacements, 3 phases. Phase 1 is in engineering. It's hopefully going to go into bid this winter. We said that last winter and it's been held up all year. So hoping for better news. That'll cover 10,770 linear foot in the north end of Boston. Phase 2 and 3 will be more towards the middle and south end of town. Water consolidation study also was started in 2021 when we started all of these water projects. And there was a presentation held earlier this year, which I'll go through some of the information on. We also have the North Boston Park Shelter, which was ARPA funded and CDBG funded, and that is 95% complete, even though it should have been done this time last year. We're almost there. The comp plan update, we awarded our consultant in May to CPL. The steering committee has been formed, surveys distributed, and the first public meeting held. And then the EV charging station, we received a NYSERDA grant, and we're looking into options for that. So that was, yes.
A quick question about water line replacement. The south end of District 1, I think you said is in phase 2.
Yes.
Is it possible to accelerate the engineering on phase 2 so that we can get it started quicker? Because that section on Boston State Road experiences some kind of outage every 4 months or so.
As for acceleration, I mean, it is already in the engineering stage. It's just everything takes so long to work through approvals and everything. We've had phase 1 stuck at the Erie County Department of Health for almost a year now.
So it's not a question of
Phase
issuing a bid
phase
and a
2 is
contract?
in engineering. It's just everything takes time.
Yeah, Ellie's right. So the water projects, phase 1, 2, and 3, these were all initiated. Ellie did a great job grabbing the resolutions that the town board had passed on these. So this has actually been in the works. If it wasn't for the pandemic, we probably would have been almost done with some of these things. That really slowed a lot of this up. And anyway, the Erie County Department of Health has to give an approval. So they issue comments and feedback on the engineering report that has to go back. There at one point in time, there's almost a 6.5 month delay on it. I mean, we were just a stack of paperwork sitting on somebody's desk, waiting for somebody to review it all. And that was part of the log jam. There's other components to that, but sadly it was a lot of things that was beyond the town board's control and even the engineer's control when it came to the water projects. So to answer your question, is there anything we can do? The Erie County Erie County Department of Health has all of the information submitted to the engineer's ready to go, and all the bidding will basically be going out, and then it's just a matter of queuing up, you know, the work, the labor, and the material. Here we go, here's all part of the logjam. So the federal government infuses a whole bunch of our federal taxpayer dollars into the economy. We're paying, you know, there's all this money out there. Every municipality, town, city, village, county, and state is now scrambling for the same resources: material, labor, engineering, et cetera. So everything is full tilt. Water line used to be over a year out. It's a heck of a lot better now. But depending on the size of the water line, it could be 2 to 3 months out. It's as far as 6 to 8 months, depending on the specs of the design. But right now, we won't know that, but again, here we go. So this all goes out to a bid. So we kind of lose the, if you will, the control over it. You know, we have the map plan report, it goes out to bid, it gets bid by ABC Contracting, let's say, whoever that is. They're the low bid, now they're going out looking to get the material and everything else. So while I can say that there's a timeline, depends on how quick that contractor has resources to get that material. And then after that, then the theory of the 1, 2, and 3 is instead of having people run up and down, contractors that is, and material up and down throughout Boston, it was all based off of, Natalie has this in her slides, I don't want to take away from her thunder, but there's a Erie County Water Authority submitted a break history report and prioritized high, medium, low priorities. That's exactly what we went after, is the high, medium, and low priorities, so.
So that phase 2 isn't being hung up waiting for money for an engineering phase, then it's
It has nothing, truthfully, it has nothing to do about the financial component. The town board is seeking out the WIA funding, or Water Infrastructure Improvement Act funding, which is WIA. That we're seeking that funding. I'm cutting into Ali's presentation here.
Your current things are all inside the house.
It's all on there, yeah. But there's funding that's available out there, but this is there's gonna be bands, bank anticipation notes, so the town is paying debt, the interest on that debt. And then the theory is ban, and then a bond, package all up, and it'll be a bond for, let's say, 30 years. That's how that's gonna be funded. So it's not really a financial component, it's just a matter of us qualifying for it. Ellie's got some of the slides on that.
It wouldn't do any good to increase that District 1 being flat in terms of rates to.
Not
increase
yet,
it 2%.
because if we were to increase it right now, the residents aren't receiving the benefit right now, so it could be seen as overtaxation without use. We are building up some fund balance for like the engineering before it becomes into the ban stage, but if we were to just say 30% increase every year to build it up, we're not seeing the outflow of it. So it's not really a matter to someone who's living in the same house for years, but if someone moves, then they're paying a higher cost for something they're never getting. So the goal is to match the revenues with the expense.
Right.
So Meadow Drive to Ripple Drive is the area that I mentioned was pretty much done. We had $150,000 of CDBG funds, and the rest was covered by ARPA. And then that total project came in around $430,000. That's pretty much buttoned up. Our water tank repairs, we've gone through these pictures every year. District 1, Crestwood Tank, these lovely pictures of rust and holes. Rice, the same thing, and Woolhider as well. I don't have any pictures of the after effects, maybe next year we will, of their project repairs, but those are mostly done. We are just waiting for ECWA and the contractor Amstar to button things up. So that came in at a cost of, we did a bond resolution for $1,825,000. We had to go through the process because that was what the engineering estimate was. We did the bond resolution in 2021. Luckily, our bid results actually came in lower, and they came in at just over $1 million. So we were lower by almost $800,000.
If I can just jump in, one of the things that the town board was able to do is we were able to negotiate an agreement with Erie County Water Authority that they did all the engineering for us, and that saved us about $35,000. They did all the engineering for all that rehabilitation work.
Now, will Erie County take over what we've done?
They will not.
Well, that's a big draw. Eden Reef is the only town that's went through that. That's a big process. Can it be done? The answer is possibly. There's quite a few hurdles that are involved in that process.
And the reason I ask is by the time we get through doing the rest of the water project, of finishing Water District 1 or 2 or 3, you're gonna be back to the time where we were hoping that Erie County would take over the whole thing after it was all redone, or if they could take it over in sections that, as we're working our way down.
They're not overly friendly to the topic. Right, here, what we're up against now, this is many years, I'm not pointing fingers, it's just the facts. Many people in this room have lived in this town longer than I have, and I will never hide that fact. But there's never action like this done prior to this
Well, a lot of
administration. And that's
a
really,
lot of
this
the
is the
lines that
town
are seeing the
board saying,
breaks,
hey, we've
they're
got a
60
problem,
years
we'll
old.
address it. Yes.
They're the original infrastructure.
Yes, they should have been like our equipment or anything else, if you follow state comptroller opinion, et cetera, there should have been a cyclical pattern, Rich, to your point, that, okay, every so many years, this is a section that gets done, or, and the reports are there, the Erie County Water Authority has notified the town of Boston for years of high, medium, low priorities, it was never done. And to, you know, to the comment earlier that, yes, it seems like we're having breaks, we just had a break today on South Abbott, there's another example. It's because it wasn't done before. So yes, and we, the worst case scenario, the worst scenario that we had was the boil water advisory. So, pay me now, pay me later. You can only kick, like anything else, you can only kick the can down the road long enough before it comes back to bite you.
So yeah, for the water towers, we did go out to ban, which is a bond anticipation note. It sold last year at a interest rate of 3.87%, so that came due just last week at $39,000 of interest. We renewed it, which is basically reselling it. It came in at 4.5 this year, which they did have a coupon or a premium on it, so it drops our interest rate down to 4.23, which will see a $42,787 interest next year. We'll also have our first principal payment next year of $26,790, and those are spread across the funds based on how many parcels and the water tower and all of that. So the District 1 will see only the District 1 water tower costs. District 3 tower will see the District 3 tower costs. So the water line repairs, here's a picture of some of the breaks that are mentioned on the list. So as Jason mentioned, we have the high, medium, low priority list prepared by ECWA. We get one of these every year. I don't have the most recent one, so this is last year's, but it stayed the same for the prior years. And yeah, it shows on here that like some of the breaks and things have been notified to the town going back to 2008. Some of them are more new, 2020 there. But here is another version of showing like there's 12 leaks in that area, 18 leaks in that area. So these are up by Northside Meadow on this picture, but there was a whole report from ECWA on all of the breaks. So the average 6 water breaks a year in District 1. These are where the breaks have happened. Heinrich Road has had the most, as well as Boston. Colden to Lango Road have had the most, and then various other areas. So the original cost estimate we got for this water project repairs from the ECWA list was a total of $10.6 million. That's for a wrap at all of the whole project together, not splitting it out by phases. That was back in 2020. And here it shows phase 1, or the water line replacements up there and the pump stations down here. The water main replacements were going to be 10.2 million, pump station 400,000 for the total of 10.6 million. At 10.6 million, that would have been an estimated debt service unit, squared in the red, was $289 per parcel. But unfortunately, costs go up, so there are potential funding sources. We have applied for CDBG grant. We've sent in WIA applications every year. We've applied for EFC. We can use, if there's any ARPA funds left after the closed projects, we will apply them to that. And then we'll ban or bond the rest. So we did submit a WIA application in 2021. I put the resolution there. We got denied, again, 2022, denied, and our most recent one went in the last month, and so we're waiting an answer. The most recent one was only for phase 2 and 3 because phase 1 is already in the works. So it was more detrimental if we were to do the whole project, so we applied for phase 2 and 3. Yeah, as Jason mentioned, the boil water advisory is really what kicked the whole project forward, because it's been talked about, and that was really like, we need to do it now. So phase one is shown in the green up there. Zooming in on it, it shows really the area of Meadow, North Side, Herman Hill area. Valley Circle is where phase one is gonna happen, because all of these leaks, 17, 18, 12, 20, they're the also highest priority on the list. Those ones are the ones in the stars. I mean, it does hit a few of the lower ones, but it's all because of proximity. So phase one in 2021 had a cost estimate that increased it from 10.6 to $11 million. Phase one jumped up to 3.8 million. And then a year later in 2021, it jumped up to 5.2 million because costs of increasing. At this point in 2022, we were in the design stage. We were hoping to get everything to go through Erie County Water and Department of Health at the end of 2022 into 2023. We're now at the end of 2023, still waiting this. So yeah, we're a whole year behind where we hope to be. And then we just had a recent cost update from our engineers. Luckily, the overall cost stayed around the same, went from 5.2 for phase one to just over 5 million for phase one. And then phase two is 8 million and phase three is about 2 million. For a total project cost of now 15.6 million. So that's gone from 10.6 to 15.6. So that $5 million increase meant we had to do new bond resolutions. So in July, or in May 2023 is when we got the updates. We did bond resolutions in July 2023. Those are all in the board packets. And then we submitted for WIA right after that. So we have talked about water consolidation. CPL came out and did a great report on it. They discussed the status of existing water districts, current and anticipated debt, potential build-outs, and consolidation options. So this study was authorized back in 2021. So they broke down that we do have 2,815 existing users out of 3,739 parcels in town. There are a mix of ad valorem and unit-based costs. So here is a map of all the districts. Red is generally District 1. The district extensions are slightly different colored. District 3 is blue and District 2 is yellow, 2 extension is green. Our existing debt, the District 3, as I said, District 1 and 2 just paid off their debt. District 3 has 3.6 million remaining. Our tank improvements, which we just talked about, is another $1 million, for a total of $4,654,940 that we owe. And then the projects that we just talked about, the 15.6 million, means that once all of this gets completed that we already have in the works will be about $20 million in debt. So the future projects that could potentially happen, if there was buy-in, if the users actually wanted to go forward with this, if they're willing to commit to the debt that would be associated with this, Water District 2 extension, the area that previously is in the water district that's not receiving service, a lot of residents are complaining because when the district was created, they were promised the service. They never received it. That, if we got water to all the people in that district, would cost an approximate of $11 million for 130 new users. The red area down here, not to be confused with the colored areas, would be 145 new users at another $12 million. And then this area here to the town line in between District 1 and 3 extension would be $6 million for 77 new users. Total, if we were to build out to the whole town, to everyone in the town having water, $30 million. Here's the different maps, just breaking out the different pieces that they showed, and then their cost estimates for it. So then the whole topic of this came up because of the consolidation. If we were to roll, basically, what consolidation means is if instead of District 1, 2, and 3, if the whole town became a district, There's considerations such as, would we do unit-based or ad valorem? Would we do just the people in existing districts or the whole town? And would we do just the existing debt or build out to these potential projects as well? So CPL did put different scenarios together of if we did existing debt, if we had WIA funds, if we didn't, as well as if we did build out and if we had WIA funds and if we didn't. This would be unit-based, and then there's also if we went ad valorem. The biggest thing is none of this actually is saying we're doing this. The next steps would be the town board would have to make a decision. Does any of this want to actually happen? If the residents had buy-in, if the town board decides they want to go forward with it, then a methodology would be selected, a MAP plan report would be finalized, seeker would have to be done, a public hearing would have to be done, and then a permissive referendum would have to be done. All that before it actually hits to the tax roll and rolls out. So definitely would need the buy-in from the residents because that would be a big change. So in summary, for all the water stuff we talked about, the CDBG work from Boston State's complete. The district, phase 1 district water lines are awaiting Erie County Department of Health. Phase 2 and 3, we've updated the engineering costs, applied for WIA funding, revised the bond resolution, district consolidation, as we previously went through, are all up in for discussion topics. So our other projects going on are town park restroom at North Boston. That was the engineering sketch. And then here is pretty much final stage. We're at like 98% right now, just final work being done. And then our comprehensive plan was last from 2000, so that's in the process of being updated. The purpose of the plan is basically to decide the future of the town. Where do you want the commercial district? Where do you want build out? We were awarded $25,000 grant from Erie County and another $63,000 from the state to do this update. The plan basically documents the characteristics of the town. If the town wants to stay agricultural, where are the agricultural districts? If the town wants to grow, where do we want to grow, how do we want to grow? Kind of setting the scene for that. And so here's the resolution authorizing the consultant of CPL and their cost proposal. There's different tasks where they have to do meetings, community participation, community profile, then a draft, and then environmental review, planning board review, etc. So the first public workshop was held on August 28th. There will be another one if you missed that and want to come. I don't have the date of that right now. But so far, the steering committee's been formed, the survey's been gone out, so if you haven't done that, it's available on our website or by reaching out or by following that QR code. So yeah, next steps are still more outreach, more community profile creation, and then a draft plan. So the steering committee did put different strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats together of like where they see the town, what they want it to be, as well as that. So then electronic vehicle charging station, we had a NYSERDA grant for $5,000. We are also looking into the NYSEG Make Ready program, and a lot of this was set to go, and then the state released more opportunities for funding, so we've paused the push to get it in until we could look into those, and now we're coming into winter, so this will be a project for next year. And then we also added new projects for the town hall generator. All the buildings that town owned now have generators other than the town hall. We did have a pipe break in this room because we didn't have it when the snowstorms came through last year. We also are looking at the town hall entryway needs replacement. There's cones out there not to use it. And that engineering cost is $17,000. Their estimates around $50,000 for full replacement of stairs, handrails, and the pillars, because the pillars are apparently
I'll chalk up the
disintegrating?
disintegrating. Yeah, that's a. sadly, it's a bad design on the front, that we're calling it the front porch or front entryway. But the wood columns are down on the concrete, so all the sand, the rain, the snow builds up and goes around there. It's eating the wood, and the town board was proposed 3 options. One was restorative. Basically, we were gonna potentially pay someone to come in, cut this all out, try to restore it to its natural state. So labor far exceeded the material. Plan B was to replace and kind of hope for the best, but that still wouldn't fix, future-proof. The third option was to do it the right way, and if you recall the picture there from the North Boston Pavilion, a stone, basically if you will, a stone pedestal, wood on top of that, roughly 12 to 14 inches off the ground. So that's what the CPL is going to engineer, and then of course our front entrance, since it hasn't really been touched since the beginning, when the town hall was built, has to now meet, because it's a public building, meet ADA requirements. You tack on ADA to something, the price goes through the roof. But essentially, there's been a lot of repairs on the front steps. The repairs are not holding, so it was time to fix it versus put Band-Aids on something that needed a surgery. So what you can kind of see in that small upper right-hand corner picture, the stairs will be removed, the outside concrete structures will remain, and instead of having kind of a step up to a platform and then up again into the front door, it'll be one level surface, new pillars, and hopefully we'll never have to talk about the front entrance for many years to come. But it'll be fixed. Because right now it's starting to pull away from the building, so fix it now before we have a bigger problem.
Why not make it wheelchair accessible?
So
A lot of money.
You'd probably be looking at about I had that conversation in a ballpark of a $300,000 to $400,000 project, because you'd have to put in a ramp up front. And there's, quite frankly, no reason to do it when we have a back entrance and an elevator that we already spent a sizable amount of. We're actually secured, that was also another CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Funded project, but the elevator modernization that we haven't talked about in the budget presentation for a while was something else that we did, because it was leaking oil, got that fixed. So that's our ADA accessible entrance point. People can park around the building. Should they need to go upstairs, town clerk, any offices, that's how we keep that cost down. Plus also keep the, kind of, if you will, the character and the nostalgic character of the front of the town hall.
Yeah, there's not really a good place to put it.
There's not, no, and it would cost a lot of money, so.
So the other things I have on here is the tennis courts, they need resurfacing. The fence also needs either repair or replacement. And then there's been a lot of interest in pickleballs, either as blended lines or as courts of themselves. And there's even been some interest in a practice, well, I don't know if that'll happen, but something to discuss. We don't have any estimates currently. I do know we reached out to a neighboring town. Their cost was probably like $25,000 for 2 courts, and we have 4, so you're looking higher than that. Boys and Girls Club driveway is slated to be repaired next year, hopefully. That needs to be potholes repaired and repaved. And then I put drainage improvement area on there. That's been a discussion for a few years, which is why the drainage reserve fund was created. The town hall generator, I just put the resolutions in there that showed the costs. Because we did actually award that recently for $222,000. So grants awarded to the town over the last few years are listed here. We've had a mix of things, CDBG, JCAP we get every few years. We've had DASNY, we did the generator, or the boiler and IT upgrades by a DASNY grant, a playground by DASNY, CDBG for the water line for the North Boston Park. We've received the comp plan funding, and we received COVID-19 funding, as well as a few other smaller grants. Boston Emergency Squad has also received money here. So other successful projects we've done over the last few years, financially we've decreased general fund taxes, we've started forecast budgeting, we've stayed under the tax cap, been awarded grant funding, increased funding to fire and ambulance companies, LED upgrades around town, credit cards are accepted for tax payments as well as court now. Multi-year capital planning, we have cycled out aging equipment for the highway fund, we've established drainage reserve fund, we've started water line repairs, started a comp plan update, and done updated zoning maps and drainage study. For ADA upgrades, we did renovate at the town hall, the boiler, the elevator, internet wiring. We've done the courtroom seating, the community room seating, the water fountains, HVAC upgrades in this room, as well as a streaming service for residents to watch board meetings from home. We've also done the Salt Barn roof, the South Boston Playground, North Boston Park Shelter, and EMS in Parksville, and just got a generator a couple months ago. For services, we brought in the Boys and Girls Club. The Stay Fit exercise program is back at the nutrition, senior nutrition. We brought back a full-time code enforcement. We've implemented at your door recycling. And for community, we did do memorial bricks once a couple years ago, a historical marker, and some drainage projects. So if you have any follow-up, those are Jason and I's contact information. The public hearing will be next week. But if you have any further questions or discussion,